Next week, Sunday evening. We are ready for you. So please make sure that you get your invitations. Is that all right? Thank you so very much. Let's welcome Elder Hall.
Thank you. Good morning, Sabbath School.
Good morning.
It is so good to see so many people out for the Sabbath School hour. And some of you, I recognize some of your faces from last night. And we had a good time last night, didn't we? We kind of laid the foundation. For those of you who missed it, we sort of laid the foundation of how we're going to move ministry forward in our respective churches. And we're just going to kind of continue that right now. We had a good, pleasant night of rest. We're enjoying the warm weather. It's just good to be here today. And my wife is here with us again. Oh, there she is right there. And with that being said, I wanted to spend the time we have move forward. I mentioned last night, and what we're going to speak about today is how to change from this process of life. This is how many of us, including myself, live life or have lived life. This is how we go through life. I wish, I should, I could, I might, I'm thinking about it. That's how we go through life, right? Like I should write a book. I'm thinking about writing a book. 5 years later, we're saying the same thing. I should go back to school. I'm thinking about going back. 5 years later, we're still wishing and thinking and hoping. And we want to kind of move past that, especially when we're talking about ministry. We're going to talk about outreach tomorrow. We'll spend some time there. And many times when I visit different churches and their ministries, we're always talking about what we're going to do. Not a lot about what we're actually doing. It's always we're going to do this. So let's see how we can move past that. And it's called Launch Out into the Deep. There are 4 principles that absolutely work. But we're going to start by reading Luke chapter 5. So if you could just turn to Luke chapter 5. And I find this story is just fascinating. It's just a fascinating story. And Luke is one of my favorite authors. I just like the way that he tells his story, his side of the story. But Luke chapter 5, and we're going to start reading at verse 1. And then we're going to go into the presentation. Luke chapter 5, and I'll read this in your hearing. And it reads as thus. And it came to pass, I'm going to interrupt myself a lot too, because this is just too good. And it came to pass that as the people pressed upon him to what? To hear what? Okay. Now for our Sabbath school people, this is the first clue of how to have a successful Sabbath school. It was right there in that verse. I don't know if you saw it, but it's right there in that verse. The people flocked to hear the what? That is what Sabbath school should be about. Not a bunch of jibber jabber about stuff. That's not how we'll grow Sabbath school. That this example is the example that we're going to follow. It says, and the people pressed upon him to hear the word of God. He stood by the lake of Gennesaret and saw 2 ships standing by the lake, but the fishermen were gone out of them and were washing their nets. I'm in verse 3 now. And he entered into one of the ships, which was Simon's, and prayed him that he would thrust out a little from the land. And he sat down and did what? He sat down and he taught the people. Well, this is almost like a script for Sabbath school. And taught the people out of the ship. Let's just pause there. As far as I know, this is the first recorded instance of Jesus teaching from a ship. As far as I know, right? I just suspect that there were Pharisees in the crowd that said you shouldn't be doing it that way. That's not how we traditionally do things. You know, you should be in the temple, very dignified. But the lesson that we get from just this verse here is that Jesus adapted to the needs of his audience. If it took getting in a boat so they could all hear and they could all see him, he got in a boat. That's a lesson for us, because many times in our zeal for God, we are trying to protect traditions more than we're trying to advance the Word of God. We will fight you over some traditions. And that's all they are, traditions. You know, right? That's all they are. We start church at 11 o'clock because the Bible said to start at 11 o'clock. No, it's a tradition. But if you tell me on Sabbath, we're going to start from now on at 2 o'clock, we're going to have a fight. Nothing's really changed. It's still a Sabbath, but my tradition says this is how we should do it. And Jesus never was boxed in by traditions. He respected traditions as we respect traditions, but he would never allow them to interfere with his mission. That should be our mindset, right? Okay, so that's the kind of setup for this. And let's see here. So this is where we start. Those words are so small, but it's just what we read so far. And we're going to keep reading. So I'm going to keep reading, but when I say stop, don't keep reading. Okay? When I say stop, that means stop. All right, so what verse was I in? I was in 3. So I'm now in verse 4. It says, now when he had left speaking, he said unto Simon. Now who is Simon? Peter. That's my man Peter. He said unto Simon, launch out into the deep and let down your nets for a draught. And Simon answering said unto him, Master, we had toiled all the night and have taken nothing. Stop reading. Just stop. Stop right here. What do you hear Simon Peter saying to Jesus in just the words we read just now? What do you hear him say? Give up? There ain't no fish? What was that? Wasting time? We're tired. We're experts because they were fishermen by career. What else do you hear? What do you hear them saying so far? No faith? Okay, because we just stopped right here. We haven't continued reading, so make sure we stop right here. Anybody else hear anything else? What do you hear? Been there, done that. There's no fish here. Oh, working hard without any success. Oh, I like that. I like that. Yes, ma'am.
Where are we going to get the fish from?
Where are we going to get the fish from? Because this is not working where we are. Yes, yes.
What you're telling us to do makes no sense. We've already done it.
We've already done it. Been there, done that. Yes, sir.
All night.
All night. Yes, sir.
If you pass one day, one night, you don't find nothing. That's the day you don't make sense, right?
Right.
Right. That's because this lake class came to him. Christ said, Peter, leave this place, go in this place I send you.
Yes.
This
Okay.
man go in there.
Okay.
Like it,
All right, don't go ahead of us now. I said stop reading. Don't get ahead of the story. All the way in the back, then I'll come to you. Yes?
Impossible.
Impossible. I hear him saying impossible.
I
Yes.
guess I hear Simon saying it'll take a miracle.
It'll take a miracle. Yes, sir.
I give up.
I give up. Yes.
Fish ain't biting.
Fish ain't biting today. Yes, ma'am. Yes. What was that? We need your help. Oh, I love that. Oh, those are great things. There's one other thing that I hear him saying that I can identify with, and some of us can identify with. I hear Simon Peter saying to Jesus that we have done the best we could with everything we had, and we have nothing to show for it. Man, that's a bad place to be in life. To realize you did the best you could with everything you had, and you have nothing to show for it. Some of us, that resonates with us when we think about our children. I did the best I could raising these children, and now it appears I have nothing to show for it. Some people can relate to that. Some people have put a lot of time and effort into careers and relationships, and they look back and say, I have nothing to show for it. That's a bad position to be in, isn't it? But that's what Peter is saying. Listen, we did all that we could. We were out all night, and we have nothing to show for our efforts. However, we know that's not where the story ends, right? Right? We know that's not, because Jesus is never intimidated by an obstacle. Right? I mean, can you think of any circumstance in the Bible where Jesus said, boy, I don't think I can handle that? Can you think? Okay, wait. There was some hard stuff. Let's see here. There was a man who had been crippled for 30-some years. Was Jesus intimidated by that? All he asked the man is, what's up? What's the story? And the man tells him this long story about, which is a true story about, I just have nobody. And Jesus simply says, do this. And because that man did not question, he just did it, he got the miracle. He could have said, listen, I can't. Don't you see it? I can't do what you're asking me to do. But because he just obeyed the word, he received the miracle. That's what we're going to keep reading in this story. Okay. All right, so here we go. Man, that's Wait. I was just thinking, maybe there is something. I know he can heal blind people, crippled people, sick people. But what if somebody actually died? Is that out of his realm of power? Does the Bible say that he can handle even death? Who's the person that he brought back to life? A man who was dead in the tomb. That didn't even intimidate Jesus. I was like, okay, Lazarus, just come on out of here, man. That's the God we serve. But the disciples were learning that this was the God they served, right? They were going through the learning process. So the story continues. We're in verse chapter 5, and the key word is nevertheless. That's the key word. I just wanted to pause on before we get started. We haven't even got started yet. But the key word is nevertheless. I have absolutely nothing to guarantee that what you're asking me to do is going to work. Nevertheless, I'm going to do it. The reason I want to pause here is because I am certain that God has put on the hearts of some of you things that he wants you to do. And your challenge is to not keep talking yourself out of obeying. Say it again. I'll try to say it again. That God puts things on our hearts that he wants us to do for him. Amen. And our challenge is to not talk ourselves out of doing it. Because here's what we say. I'm too old to do that. Past my prime. Or I'm too young. I don't have any money. I don't know enough people. we come up with all these excuses about why we can't do what God wants us to do. But maybe that's not the right approach we should have when God puts something on our heart. I know that God has put things on our hearts that we thought about for weeks and months and years, and we're still thinking about it weeks and months and years later. When we should have did just what Peter said. Nevertheless, though I have no evidence, I'm going to do it. I'm just going to do it. Let the chips fall where they're made. So that's how their story goes. And when they had done this, they enclosed a great multitude of fishes, and their net brake. That's how successful they were, where they were just unsuccessful by simply following Jesus' word. They were more successful than they had ever been in their lives. And they were career fishermen. And they beckoned unto their partners, verse 7, which were in the other ship, that they should come and help them. And they came and filled both the ships, so that they began to sink. When Simon Peter saw it, he fell down at Jesus' knees, saying, Depart from me, for I am a sinful man, O Lord. There was something about that miracle that spoke to Simon like no other miracle was. There was something about that miracle that helped Simon realize this was no ordinary man. I'm in the presence of God. There was something about that miracle. All of us need to have that kind of experience from time to time. It's just not an ordinary man. There should be something that we realize that this is the God of the universe. And the enemy is doing everything he can to help us to not get that view. He'll have you look at this person. He'll have you look at the pastor. He'll have you look at your past. He'll have you look at everything but Jesus. All right, so let's kind of go see how the story goes. So I told you I want to share some principles with you to help us move forward from wishing and thinking and hoping and doing. I'm going to do this in two parts. I'm going to do it for our ministry folks here. So maybe on tomorrow we can kind of pick up these themes again as we talk about outreach and making changes in how we do Sabbath school. But this is also for you personally. Apply this to yourself personally, okay? All right, here we go. So the first principle is, and it's an acronym, D-E-E-P. So I'm going to go through D and an E and an E and a P. And the first one is the hardest one. Because how do we move from wishing to I might, I should, I could, I'm thinking about? What do we have to actually do? Does anybody want to guess what the D stands for? Oh, I heard it. Determination, but I heard the pastor say the one I want to go. Let's see here. Okay. Make sure I'm going. Where am I pointing, Pastor? Right here. Thank you. Okay. All right, y'all saw the word, right? What was the word? That's what we're going to have to do. We're going to have to make a decision. That's the hard part of us going through life. Is that Berean Leslie back there? Do I see my friend from Berean? No, she didn't respond, so that must not be her. I'm going to call her out. It looks like one of my friends from Berean. Okay, so the hardest thing to do is to make a what? Decision. Why do you think it's so hard for us to make the decision about what we should do? Why do you think it's so hard? We look at our capability. We're afraid of commitment.
We don't know what the outcome will be.
We don't know what the outcome will be. Like we might fail at this, right? And that keeps us from doing anything. Here's one of the things that the moment we get ready to make a major decision, we put our focus on the obstacles rather than on the end result. When I get ready, like the Lord has told me I need to do this, and I'm already thinking about all the challenges I'm going to face. I haven't done anything yet. Nothing's happened, nothing's changed in life. I'm just thinking about it, and I've already talked myself out. I said it's going to be too hard. Anybody identify with what I'm saying? Okay, so the things to make a decision, let's see if we can. I got some notes here somewhere. I can go back. See if I can go forward. Here we go. I mentioned that earlier. This is for us tomorrow. That when we make a decision to make changes in our Sabbath school, we're going to have to wrestle between, are we more interested in maintaining the traditions of Sabbath school, or are we serious about advancing Sabbath school? And everybody says amen to that, like until you actually have to make a change. Here's the best way to talk about change, and we're going to spend time about that. The best way to talk about change is to ask someone else to change. Man, we are experts at telling other people how they should change. Right? Experts. We can just pick it out so easily. You need to change this, that, this, and that, this, and that. But when it comes to ourselves, we're a little bit more hesitant, aren't we? So we're going to talk about how to move forward. So let's see here. Focus on the good your decision will bring. That's what we're going to do. That's what I want you to do. Whatever God has put on your heart, I want you to focus on what is the good that will happen if I listen to God and move forward. I don't want you to think about what's going to be hard. Just put your foot in the water. Just put your foot in the water and see what happens, what God does. What was that? Don't worry about the temperature. Okay. All right. Let's see here. We'll do this tomorrow. I mentioned earlier and yesterday, for those who weren't here yesterday, if you're from a different church, I mentioned, and I'm a firm believer, that every Sabbath school class should have a mission project. Not every class should be talking about doing a mission project. That we need to make a decision, this is our project, and we're going to write it down, because until you write it down, you will not hold yourself accountable. You got to write it down. We had this talk at our home church, the first Sabbath, at my own church, and a guy raised his hand and he showed me on his phone a diagram of a pediatric clinic that he drew up years ago. He just wrote it down. And today he has that clinic. Let's hold ourselves accountable. Oftentimes in our church, there's not a lot of accountability. I'm just going to be honest. Oftentimes in our church and in Sabbath school, there's not a lot of accountability. You can be an ineffective Sabbath school teacher and no one's going to say anything to you about it. You can have that class for 30 years, don't do anything, and that's just the way it is. No one's going to challenge you. And if they do, there's going to be a fight in the church. You can't do that on your job. We're held accountable on our jobs for our performance, right? But when it comes to the work of God, we become lackadaisical. Like, it's not that deep. Okay, so we're going to look at that tomorrow. This is what your ministry will accomplish this year. So the D stood for what? All right, so now I want to give you the next E. We have enough time to get this done. The E is an easy one. It is for effort. Until there's effort, it's just talk. It's just talk. Until you do something. You say you want to go back to school, you have to at least get online to register. Amen? You say you're going to change your diet, you have to at least buy some different food. You're going to lose weight, you need some tennis shoes to walk in. Until you do that, it's just talk. It might be good talk. Now listen, some of us, we don't know how to even do it anymore. Some of us made New Year's resolutions last December. And most of those are broke already, right? Like in Atlanta, the gym where people pay to work out, people pay to work, people pay other people to let them come into their building to work. That's not a little crazy. And on January, the first 2 weeks of January, the gym is packed. Come around February, it's back to the same old people, right? Okay, so we have to put in the effort. And when we're talking about ministry, we have to hold ourselves accountable, which means, let's just use our mission project as an example. We're deciding that in February, we are launching X ministry for this community. We're going to write it down, and we're going to say, Brother Jones, this is your job. Sister Smith, this is your job. Brother Larry, this is your job. We're going to hold ourselves accountable, and then we're going to do something. Am I making sense? I'm just trying to keep this clear, okay? All right. And in your own personal life, when you make the decision, you have to put in the effort. And sometimes all that means is just putting one step forward. Amen. Now, I'm an international author. Amen. Thank you. Someone from Canada bought one of my books, so I am now international. I'm international. Now, growing up, I never ever dreamed I would be able to write a book. That was like for the other people. My cousins across the track, they could write books. You hear what I'm saying? But I was just dumb enough at a certain part of my life to believe I'm going to go ahead and do this. I'm going to go ahead and do it. And I started scribbling up some stuff, and my wife, who is educated, she said, well, let me fix some of this bad English in this book. Boy, you about to embarrass our whole family. And she edited it, and I sent it off, and I got it printed, and that book is taking me around the world. Amen. Yes. It wasn't because I was smarter than anybody else. I just did it. And I'm saying to someone here, just do it. Quit worrying about if you fail or if the outcome isn't right. Don't worry. Listen, I'll talk about this later, but every year at my previous church where I was superintendent at Berean, I served there for 9 years as superintendent. At the end of the year, we got all of our Sabbath school people together and extended families, and we had a luncheon, and we gave an award out for our lower division teachers and our upper division, our adult. We had a nice, beautiful acrylic thing made up, trophy kind of thing, and we would have the lower division teacher of the year. On my staff, everyone deserved it, because they were all stellar people. But we would pick somebody that we wanted to show recognition to. The award I wish that I had done, that I did not do, I wish I had created the mistake of the year award. Or maybe I would say the biggest blunder of the year award I want to present to Brother Jones. And bring Brother Jones up and say, Brother Jones, we just want to acknowledge that your idea was terrible. But we want to give you an award because at least you tried something different. I would rather you fail, but at least you tried. Don't play it so safe. No, that's too risky. Just do it. Make a decision. Listen, the Bible is a book about making decisions. All throughout the Bible, the theme is choose you this day whom you will serve. Make a decision. Jesus was always calling people, make a decision. That rich young ruler, he asked him, make a decision. His disciples, make a decision. And he asked all of us to make a decision. We said, yes, we'll follow you. But he doesn't just want us to stop once we begin to follow him. He's got greater things for you. There's stuff that he knows you can do you can never imagine yourself doing. You're saying, I'm too old. No. Okay? All right, let's keep going before I run out of time. So the E stands for effort. And what is your action plan? We'll talk about that later. If you are in a small group Sabbath school, they call it an action unit. It's because you're doing some action. I didn't say that right, apparently. It is no virtue, in my opinion, to be a member of a Sabbath school class and all you do is sit together on Sabbath and talk religious stuff. That doesn't really impress me. I mean, you might feel proud that you've been in Brother Jones' class for 40 years. What I want to know is, what does your class do outside of these walls? Y'all reading all this spiritual stuff and all this Bible stuff? Is it forcing you? Is it compelling you to do something? You need an action plan. If we have time tomorrow, we'll draw up an actual action plan for your Sabbath school ministry. Now let's get to the next. Okay. That's Tony Robbins. He's a famous motivational speaker, but I like this quote. It says, a real decision is measured by the fact that you've taken a new action. If there's no action, you haven't truly decided. I think that's true. All right, let's see here. List what you will do. We're going to do that later. Oh, this is the one I want to get to. Pastor, I have till 10:35, 10:40? Okay. I'll get it done. The D stood for what? Decision. And the first E stood for? Does anybody have a guess what the next E might be? There's no way you're ever going to guess it. I just want to see. What is it? Effective was a good one. I might redo it and put effective. That's not the one I had. Efficiency, that's a good one too. Execute. Experience. Energy. Encouragement. I'm going to redo this whole slide. You gave me a new presentation. The one that I think that is most crucial to moving forward, that's the whole focus here. How do I move forward? I have to make a decision. I have to put in the effort. Execute is good. But the one that I want is my environment. I have to just take some time with this. Here is the number one question that I believe is the number one question that you should ask yourself. It is, who am I around and what are they doing to me? Okay, there's a gray Chevy Jeep, license plate, AH0419, and a gray Ford van, AE6928. Can you please remove your vehicles? You are blocking the parking lot. Now let's see who gets up. Who it is. We're going to have to get up sooner or later. We're going to see who it was. You need to move your vehicle. Oh, there's one up. I don't know if that's her or not. All right. I forgot what I was saying. Listen, here's the truth. we all influence each other. You do know that, right? The people that you associate with are either helping you to reach what God wants for you, or they're holding you back. That's it. Yeah, there's no like maybe. They are either helping you to be all that God wants you to be, or they're holding you back. They may not be doing it intentionally. It just might be the level of life they're living on, and this is how they see life. They don't have any hard feelings against you, but you might have to choose that you have to change your environment. I'll use this time to tell a little story about myself. Now, I grew up in Cleveland, Ohio. Anybody been to the great city of Cleveland, Ohio? What a fabulous place to spend a vacation. Cleveland, Ohio. And I grew up in the projects of Cleveland, Ohio. Do they use that term, projects, down here? Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Is there an equivalent word?
Yeah.
Ghetto. It sounds worse now. I'll stick with projects. Okay? I'm going all the way in. I grew up in the ghetto, which is government housing in the Cleveland. It's government housing, brick units, government housing of Cleveland, Ohio for the poor people. That's where I grew up. My formative years were there. And looking back, it was just nothing but fun. That's all it was. It was fun every day. All we did was play. We didn't know how mama kept anything going. We just played, and when we got finished playing, we would come in and eat up all mama's food and go out and play some more. That's all we did. But because I was a product of my environment, I soon adopted habits and practices that were typical in the ghetto. I started to consume on a regular basis things that I am too embarrassed to say publicly right now. It wasn't that, I was crazy. I was just doing what everybody else was doing. It's just how life was lived in the projects of Cleveland, Ohio. I don't know how, because my mother passed many, many years ago. I don't know how she was able to do it. I know she worked hard. I know she cleaned houses. I remember in our little kitchen in the projects, a little bitty kitchen, she had a daycare where she would watch other folks' kids. She was industrious. I don't know how she managed to financially do it, but one day she moved us out of the projects all the way across town. Saved my life. Before we moved, I was a dropout. One time I was out, I cut class. Did they say that? Skip class? For like 30 days straight. 30 days straight, I left the house acting like I was going to school. And then trying to find something to do until school was out. I should have just went to school. That was so hard. Like, what are we going to do today? Just stupid stuff. But because my mother moved us out of that environment, I now had a chance to escape peer pressure. Some of you, God has just turned your life upside down, and while you are whining and complaining, He just saved your life. Amen. That relationship just wasn't going to do you any good. That job, though you like that job, there's a reason why you're not in that job anymore. Just trust God. He sees the long game, right? He sees the bigger picture. And our environment of who am I around and what are they doing to me must be the question we ask ourselves. And hopefully we'll say, yes, I'm around positive people that are trying to do well. All right, amen? So that's the big one that I like to talk about. And let's see, the environment. Place yourself where God can bless you. I like that. I think I got that from Helen White. I'm pretty sure those are her words. Place yourself where God can bless you. Wow, that's so simple and true. This is just some things we'll talk about later about creating an environment in ministry so that it is a positive environment. One is you have to lead by example. If you are a Sabbath school leader or a Sabbath school teacher or a ministry leader, you cannot ask people to do what you yourself are not willing to do yourself. Amen? That's a simple one, right? Celebrate. Listen, everyone is a volunteer but the pastor. Pastor's the only one getting paid. So while I demand that whatever we do in ministry, we do in excellence, I must remember everyone's a volunteer. They're not my employees. I can't speak to them any kind of way. No, they don't have to be. Listen, you can complain about the usher, but she doesn't have to be back there. So we need to celebrate and affirm people. I told you about our little luncheon. Stay positive. In the world that is so negative, when they come to Sabbath school, let's be positive. We'll talk about that during our service. Communication, no secrets, first class. Usually, we say our church doesn't have the resources. Listen, I don't care what your resources are. Whatever you do, you should do first class. Amen. Don't just throw something out there against the wall. You couldn't do that at your job. So don't do it in God's work. Okay, which means planning. We have to sit down and plan. And I gave you last night, those of you who were here, we went over 5 questions for ministry. And if you weren't here, you missed something last night that you can take back to your Sabbath school team and go over those 5 questions, those are some of the notes from last night. That we should do. Okay, let's talk about the last one. So let's see. The D stood for make that decision. I know I'm speaking to somebody's heart. Make that decision. Do it. The first E stood for put in the work. There's no shortcuts. You got to put in the work. You want to be good at something? You want to be an expert at something? You got to put in the work. We admire the athletes like LeBron and in my generation, Michael Jordan. And we see it's just so naturally easy when we're watching, but we don't see the behind the scenes work they're putting in. The hours upon hours of practice and training and conditioning. You got to put in the work. Listen, if I can work that hard for a sports team, or for the man for 40 hours and a paycheck, why can't I do that for God? Why should God get our leftovers? Like I worked so hard for the man all week, and now I'm just too tired. All I want to do is just come to church and sit down. I'm too tired to do anything else. Because I need my energy for the man. At the end of our life, He is going to ask us, what did you do with the talents I gave you? Jesus tells that story. Someone's going to say, hey, I did the best I could and I increased it. And the Bible also says one said, listen, I didn't really have much to start with, so I just kind of chilled and just did nothing. Just to stay on the safe side. That's not the right side to be on, okay? All right, so let's do the last one before they run us out of here. The last one is P. Can you guess what P is? I have to make a decision. I have to put in the effort. I have to protect my environment. What does the P stand for? What was it? She said it. I heard it, but she said the perfect one. She said the one that I wanted to talk about, which is you cannot quit. You can't quit. You're going to want to quit. It's going to feel like this is the time to quit. You can't quit. You cannot confuse where you are today wherewith God wants you to be tomorrow. Amen. You can't confuse the beginning with the end. You can't quit. You're going to want to quit. Just don't quit. Just try to make it through one more day try to go to bed, get under the covers, and say, I'm going to try again tomorrow. I didn't hit a home run today. I'm just going to take my licks. I'm going to go on to bed. And I'm going to try again tomorrow. That's all God asks us to do. Just don't quit. The victory doesn't always come at the beginning. Sometimes it comes a long way down the road. And you'll look back, and every step of the way you'll see how God was leading you. That your failures that you thought were failures were only stepping stones. That's all they were. God was just trying to train you for what he had for you. You can't quit. Oh man, you can't quit. Let's see, I think I got some good quotes here for that. Oh, this is a good one. There's a lot of small words, so allow me to read this in case you're visually challenged. I'll read these for you. This is a quotation from my favorite author. It says, the Christian should not array before his imagination all the trials which may occur before the end of the race. I'm going to start that one over again. The Christian should not array before his imagination all the trials which may occur before the end of the race. He has but to begin to serve God and each day live and labor for the glory of God. What day? That day. That day, and obstacles which appeared insurmountable will gradually grow less and less. Okay, that's an amen part right there. But that's not the end of the quotation. This part that we read here, it says that your imagination the obstacles that seem like you could never ever get around them, that day by day they're less of an obstacle. That's great right there. Oh, but there's an or in this quotation, and this is the or part. She continues to write, or should he encounter everything he has feared, if his greatest fears were realized, that's what she's saying here, the grace of Christ will be imparted to him according to his need. Strength increases with the difficulties met and overcome. Well, I just have to paraphrase that again. If your worst imagination came true, God's got your back. Amen. Exactly what you thought might happen, the problems you would face, that's okay with God. I got your back. It doesn't intimidate our God. He just doesn't want you to quit, okay? Let's see here if I have anything else. I can't remember. Don't confuse the beginning with the end. And let us, this is Galatians 6:9. And let us not grow weary while doing good, for in due season we shall reap if we do not lose heart. You just can't quit. Can't quit. You just can't quit. And in life, many times we feel no one understands us and we're just ready to throw in the towel. I'm just asking you, just make it through today. Just hang in there just today. And let's see what happens tomorrow. Just make it through today. Amen? Amen. All right, well, listen, I appreciate those of you who came out not only last night and for our Sabbath school hour. Those of you know, we're going, like somebody might be thinking, well, we're supposed to be doing a Sabbath school lesson. For those of you who know the background, we're going to do that next. We're going to have a great time. We're going to study Daniel 3, which is a fascinating story that we're going to do together as a church during 11 o'clock service. But listen, I thank you for your time, your participation, and no. I have to have documented evidence that I was here today. I've been telling everybody where I was at. So I want to prove it. With that, I don't know who to turn it back over to. There's my sister, I guess. Where am I from again? I'm from Church High. Where's that at?